before you can have that increase in performance that you're seeking. And in French, it's called reculer pour mieux sauter. Reculer pour mieux sauter. You step back or go backwards in order to jump better, which is the literal translation. If I tried to jump, I won't try to jump this one, but if I tried to jump this one, or even this one, this one will do. It's going to be very difficult for me to actually jump up to here. I can probably do it. I can do this. This one's easy. And this one's sort of easy. This one I'm going to have some difficulty with. Yes? But if I go backwards, it's going to be relatively simple to do that. And that's essentially what this Gundner-Niemann effect was. Go backwards, drop off in performance before you can expect those gains. So, reculer pour mieux sauter. Go backwards in order to jump better. Now I need a rest. Organizational restructuring in this way may raise the threat of elimination of some supervisory and middle management positions, which will make these people more resistant to the change. And also, not everyone accepts such decision-making responsibilities or control. One of my colleagues in the University of Wales in Cardiff did her PhD on this particular issue. Again, it was the European Union project that she was actually talking about. It was an agricultural project paying British farmers for subsidies, European Union subsidies. She wanted to be able to get a rapid application development going. For rapid application developments of these structural changes, you needed to have a flatter organization, and you needed people to make the decisions themselves. You had to have very quick decision-making when you have a rapid application development, rather than actually go to a committee to decide who's going to, how you go about it. Once you start going to committees or having to go to committees, then it doesn't become rapid anymore. So her whole PhD was on the fact that just because you say to someone, you now have the responsibility, you now have the authority to make decisions, there are people within organizations who are not used to having that authority, and will say, okay, I've got the authority. But they never use it. They're never prepared to make those decisions, because over time, they have become inured into believing that somebody else will make the decision for them. They won't take the responsibility or the authority that's given to them. They won't take it. So that is what you have to be concerned with as well. There was a woman called Cheryl Duval who wrote, I think it was a paper, where she said, people don't play, sometimes they don't play to lose. I'll rephrase that. They're not playing to win, they're playing not to lose. Not playing to win, but playing not to lose. You understand that? And it fits in with this not taking responsibility for, or the authority to take on these roles. It's an interesting thought, is it not? The organizations that we work in, if you are being not rewarded for your successes, but you are being punished for any failure, then what is your goal for survival within that organization? What is your goal? Is it to win, or is it not to make a mistake? Not to make a mistake. You're playing not to lose, not playing to win. So we as managers have to set up environments in which we reward success, not just punish failure. And without that, you will not get people that will be taking on that responsibility. Because we're talking about risks now. We're talking about risk. Why take a risk if you know that it could go wrong? And that's my point. That's my whole point. You have to take risk, certainly with radical changes. Radical changes involve risks. Sometimes they work and sometimes they don't. There was a classic story of a US utility company that was selling electricity to the wholesale market. And one day they said, no, we're going to restructure. We're going to restructure and we're going to go into the retail market, not just the industrial market for electricity distribution. So they put a guy in charge, and he went out, and he made all sorts of decisions, the correct decisions, by the way, but the organization wasn't actually set up to, it was set up as a wholesale for industrial rather than wholesale for retail. And after 1 year, the organizational change sort of fell in a hole. It had cost the organization somewhere around $75 million for the year. And of course, the guy that was running it got called to the managing director's office, the CEO. The CEO called him into his office, and the guy came in, and inside pocket he had his letter of resignation. He thought that he was going to get fired. I mean, he just cost the company 75 mil for an organizational change that didn't actually take place. So he went into the CEO's office. He sat down. They started talking. He took out the envelope, and he said, I suppose that you'll want this. And the guy said, what is this? He said, well, it's my resignation. He said, why are you resigning? He says, well, I've just cost the business 75 million this year with a restructure that didn't actually work properly. He said, no, put it back. Put it back in your pocket. We're not going to fire you. This lesson has just cost this organization 75 million. I'm not going to waste that lesson. Yeah, so the guy became very successful by learning from that particular mistake. But then the guy knew that he could take those sorts of chances in the future. You've got to have an environment in which you are allowed to take risks in order to make these radical changes. But if your organization is set up that will punish you if you fail, then you're not really going to be in a situation to want to take those risks. So this common, what we were talking about at the moment is leading into teams. So a common commitment to an overarching purpose, shared leadership roles, performance measures that reflect collective work products, greater reliance on open-ended discussion rather than managerial defined agendas, and people doing the work together rather than delegating to subordinates. These are characteristics of a team, the sorts of teams that we want. Within a university environment, we always ask our students to do group assignments. I would really love to be able to do group assignments for Chifley, but they're not ready for it yet. The actual process of working in a group, and I know that you're all going to say, oh, I remember going to university. I remember working in those group assignments, and it was horrible. Who has bad experience about working in groups? Yes? Just the one. What's that saying? But, yeah, that's one. Yeah, that's one of them. Yeah. I heard it all. The process, however, of doing a team assignment, not a group assignment, but a team assignment within university is a learning objective in itself. It's nothing to do with the topic that you're talking about in the course, but it's the actual process of working within a team. I've done a lot of work on a lot of publications on team competency principles and the need to actually teach this in a university environment. What I'm tending to find over time, I knew how I work in a team. I knew how I learned to work as a team. But it is not, I'm not the same type of team person as my university undergraduates these days, or even postgraduates sometimes. I learned my team skills by going out after school and playing football with my friends, or cricket, or whatever we happened to be doing. It sort of changed over time. But I guess it started when you're 5 or 6 years old. You go out and you play with other people, and you learn team skills. But today, for whatever reason, and there are a load of quite valid reasons why you don't do that as much, there's a different way of playing at the end of the day. It's usually on computers, playing computer games, and you're not having that interactions that you used to have. I don't know, but there is a need now to actually identify what it means to be in a team, what it means to be a team player. There's a classic team conflict going on at the moment with the Red Bull racing team, the Formula One Red Bull racing team. You've got a 3-time world champion, Sebastian Vettel, who's supposedly the number 1 driver, and you've got an Australian number 2 driver, Mark Webber, who has never won one world championship. And Vettel is, he's already got 3 world championships to his belt, the youngest ever triple world champion. At the Malaysian Grand Prix, Webber was actually ahead of Vettel, and the Red Bull team were 1 and 2. And I think the Ferraris were next, or the McLarens were next. They were way, way behind anyway. Sorry? Mercedes. Yes, Hamilton. He was way behind, so nobody was ever going to catch them. So what did the team do? The team said, hold positions, guys. Hold positions. Don't blow it by racing with yourselves. We're going to get a 1 and 2 here. And Webber happened to be in the lead, and Vettel was number 2. They said, hold position. And then they told the drivers to turn the power down on their machines, to save their machines. Turn the power down. This is teamwork, is it not? This was acting as a team, the Red Bull racing team. You got 2 drivers out there. The Australian was leading. The German was in second. The German triple world champion was in second. And before the end of the race, Vettel suddenly decides, nah, I'm going to overtake Webber. And he did. He ignored the team orders, and he started racing with Webber. He passed him, and can you imagine Webber being furious? He's really upset. He's turned the power down on his engine, and Vettel's turned the power up again, and he's gone by. So, and the ramifications of this is still actually happening. You've got the head of Formula One at the moment saying, show me a good loser and I'll show you a loser. That was on this morning. Show me a good loser and I'll show you a loser. Well, I certainly didn't see any teamwork in that team because it was about the team, it wasn't about the individual. Picture here. There's a much bigger picture than which member of the team actually won. This went back into an individualistic perspective rather than a team perspective. That's just something that happened, it's continuing to happen. This weekend they're in China, so it's going to be an interesting scenario to see those 2 guys again. But we're talking about team characteristics in this particular one. It's the ability to actually put your individual desires on hold for the good of the team. And sometimes that can be very difficult to do. But there is a teamness that we need to be talking about. I'm not even sure whether that's a real word, but teamness, this ability to work in a team as a team player, which is really quite important. Katzenbach and Smith wrote a book and also a Harvard Business Review article. And one of them is called The Wisdom of Teams, and the other one's called The Discipline of Teams, and I always get them mixed up. And they said that there are various types of teams that are in operation in our organizations. The first one is a working team. The second one is pseudo-team, potential team, real team, and high-performance teams. So I'm not quite sure if we can actually go through. No, we can't. What I'll need to do, I'm not going to describe each one in detail. Working group is simply about a whole group of people working together. And I would suggest to you that's what you were in. You weren't in a team at all. You were in a working group. That you were only interested in putting your little bit in. And it's like a jigsaw puzzle. You know, everybody has a particular part to the overall objectives. It's just that you got more bits to your puzzle than anybody else had. So a working group is not really quite functional. There is no a group accountability. You know, it's the individual. It's what the individual actually puts in. And in those particular circumstances, if something happens and your organizational change doesn't take place, it's very easy to say, I did my bit, it was him. You know, put the blame on somebody else. Oh, I did all right. I did my bit. So in that particular one, there's no real sense of working together. It's just people that are joined together. It's a group. In a pseudo team, you actually know that that's necessary, but you don't know how to work together. As a potential team, you know how to do it, but there's no sense of accounting, of mutual responsibility for the result that ends up. It's only when you get to this real team that you get this sense of real purpose, the purpose behind a team, that we can get synergies, that we can help each other, that we can actually get more than the sum of, the whole is worth more than the sum of the parts on this particular one. We help each other to do their particular jobs for the good of the overall objectives. And you get enormous benefits out of working within one of these teams. There's one higher, and that's the high-performance teams, which I've worked in a couple of times. Enormous. You're actually trying to help the individuals within the team as well. All of the characteristics of a real team, but high-performance teams are also after looking the welfare of the individuals within that team. So really big performance that you get out of high-performance teams. As I say, I've been in one a couple of times. This is a sad story which I hate relating because it involves Australians behaving badly, and I don't want to bag Australians behaving badly, but this was one of those examples. We like our sport in Australia. In fact, we invest a lot of money, my tax money, into making sure that we have athletes that win gold medals in Olympics. We have an Australian Institute of Sport, which goes around the country with various parts. We spend billions on making sure we get some gold medals at the Olympics. We have the specialized trainers. We have specialized physiotherapists, specialized doctors. We have psychologists to actually talk about these types of things. Social psychology is what I'm talking about now. So we expect when our teams go and compete within Olympics for them to do well, to behave as high-performance teams, and for them to come home with gold medals. That's what Australians have come to expect. In the 2004 Olympics in Athens, there was a team of women rowers. It was the women's 8. You know, 8 women in a small boat with I guess it's a woman at the end steering, a little woman because they don't want too much weight in the boat. And they did very well to get into the final of the women's 8. We all expected, as Australians, that they would be, with all of this training, a high-performance team, that they would think in terms of themselves with mutual accountability for the results. Unfortunately, one of the rowers, halfway down the course in the final, stopped rowing. She was exhausted. She couldn't row anymore. So she stopped. Bang. And of course, if one rower stops, then, you know, it's your history. You're gone. So we get to the end, we say, oh, this is very disappointing. One rower stopped. But it's what happened, and they obviously didn't win anything, but it's what happened after that that really frightened us. When they got out, the seven other women said, it was her. She cost us the medal. She was the one who stopped rowing. She cost us the medal. And if you think about that, at a lower level, yes, she was. She was the one that actually stopped rowing. But they were not operating as a team. At that very moment, they did not take responsibility for the success or, in that case, for the failure. They took it on themselves. And they said, it was her. It was her. She stopped rowing. We are okay. And that team never actually recovered from that particular incident. And if I had a choice, I would have withdrawn all my tax money from funding them. But it just shows that sometimes you think that your organization is high performance until, well, we say when push comes to shove. When the moment of decision comes, and then you really find out whether you've got a high performance team or a real team or whether it's just a working group. And after all, spending all of that money with psychologists and training, we found out that at the end of the day, they were nothing more than a working group. So it's very difficult. And I would say the Red Bull example is exactly the same. That there was one individual in there that doesn't care about the team. He cares about his own individual glory. So, remember, does anybody watch the Oscars presentation? You know, the film Oscars? Well, you know, the guys who win the Oscars all get up and say, you know, I'd like to thank my directors and I'd like to thank because they know that they don't get up there on their own. It's not something, winning an Oscar is not something that you do as an individualistic endeavor. It is with a whole group of people that are around you. And at least they know at that level to thank those people. Because if you don't thank those people, they're not the ones that's up there actually holding the Oscar. So teamwork is very important. What you're trying to do within operations management is to actually change your teams into real teams rather than working groups. So productivity is of major concern for operations managers. It's a function of many factors ranging from organizational structures to machine maintenance regimes, but the human element of workforce management will generally be of major importance, especially for service organizations, where there is a direct involvement of people. In terms of competency, Frame, and I've left out that again, it's 1999, suggested that there are individual, team, and organizational competencies to consider. The individual competency is what causes employees to be more productive. Incentives tend to encourage productivity behavior. Traditional reward systems based on motivational theories, such as from Maslow or Hertzberg. Do we generally know what Maslow is? Maslow's hierarchy of needs? Maslow's hierarchy of needs, it's called. Which one? Well, the physiological needs are at the bottom. It's essentially, and we don't have time to talk about these individual theories now, but essentially Maslow says that there are levels of needs that individuals want to be motivated. And the bottom line is physiological needs. You need food and shelter, and a few other things. Sleep is one of them, by the way, which we found out with the Dagbrucken case. Unless you've got those, none of the other motivational needs above that actually make sense. So the one above that is, once you've got those, then they're no longer motivators. You go for higher needs, and that's the security one. Then you've got social needs, and then you've got self-esteem needs, and right at the top you've got this self-actualization need. So essentially you can't climb up those needs until you've satisfied the ones below it. That's what Maslow said. Hertzberg, on the other hand, says that his needs, the motivational factors, are made up into hygiene factors, which don't motivate, but the lack of them will demotivate, and the motivators themselves. So both of these theories, and a half a dozen more, such as McGregor's theory X, theory Y, small motivations. They work very well at an individual level, but they don't explain how teams get motivated. And for that, there's people like Gaither and Fraser. They outline the team incentives that you can actually have. But there is an individual competency to actually have. It is how competent the individual is to act within a team. And the training programs also enhance productivity and may include task-specific or general skills. This is the individual competency level. The second one is a team competency level, and this is work that we did a few years ago. For optimum workplace effectiveness in knowledge-intensive industries, such as we're working in today, in which the principles of knowledge management need to be applied, it is necessary to take into account not only the competency of individuals, but also the competencies of the teams in which they must operate. So you've got an individual competency of the individuals within a team, but then you've got the competencies of how the team works as a team. The example that I usually use in this particular one is there are two film actors, which any chance I get to see movies these days is on a plane. But when I go through the list of movies that I can see on my flights to anywhere, I look for, if Robin Williams is there, I think, oh, Robin Williams is pretty good. And also if I see Billy Crystal there, I say, well, okay, Billy Crystal, yeah, that's a movie, I'll watch this one. Now, maybe you choose in a different way, but if I see those particular actors there, I think, okay, he's got a new movie out, I'll watch this one. Because individually, each of them is very competent at their job. They both put out very good movies. So imagine my surprise when I got onto a plane and I saw there was a movie with both Robin Williams and Billy Crystal in it. I thought, ooh, I'm going to see this. Ching. Individually, they would both be great. So I thought that, naturally, that if they were together, it was going to be super great. It was a lemon, an absolute lemon. Just because the individuals themselves are competent, that mix of those individuals can turn out to be something entirely different. I don't know what this film was. It didn't fly. Well, it flew with me, but it certainly didn't get any success. They never worked again. Everybody knew that it was a lemon of a film at the end of the day. So that's the example that I use, in that you expect people with individual competencies to work well as a team, but it's not always guaranteed. The organizational competency, on the other hand, involves how each of the individual tasks and teams interact. And that is from a higher perspective. The organization needs to set up systems in which the teams can actually operate effectively. I would do what is likely to be one of the most challenging operations management projects that this country has seen. It's called Expo 2020. And all of the operations that have actually needs to be put together to make it successful. Has everybody heard of Expo 2020? Yeah. Now, we haven't even won the bid yet. But I know from personal experience in Brisbane, where we had a World Expo in 1988, it has literally transformed Brisbane. It took the whole infrastructure, the most enormous organizational restructuring I've ever seen in my life. It took a whole city, not the whole state, but the whole city. It changed the whole way that they thought about things. Radical, enormously radical. So, you know, I have great respect for something like a World Expo. But the effect that it is likely to have on Dubai, the effect it is likely to have on the UAE is going to be just enormous. So all of these things, in a practical sense, I'm not going to guarantee this, but I would put money on somebody within this room doing operations management at the moment that will be actively involved in Expo 2020 should we get the bid. Should we win that bid, somebody in this room will be involved in it. So remember where you got your job from. It's going to be an enormous structural change for anywhere that a World Expo goes. Work design is analogous to engineering design. A well-designed job should create conditions which are likely to enhance motivation of the person performing the job. You're trying now not just to motivate the person from outside, but from inside what you are actually trying to do, the job itself. 3 aspects need to be considered. The how, the layouts, the flows and designs. That is the method. How does the task contribute and how much control the worker has over it? That is the motivation part. You need to feel part of what you are doing to the overall organization. If you think that your particular role has no contribution to the overall output that you're going to get, you're not going to be motivated. There was an example when I did some research for a government organization in Australia. It was actually about sharing knowledge. Management actually of this organization brought me in as a consultant to, no, not as a consultant researcher. I didn't get paid that much. They said that our team members, our organizations are hoarding knowledge, which means that they were not sharing knowledge with each other. And I went in there to try and investigate why they weren't sharing knowledge, why they weren't motivated to share knowledge. And as this happened to be part of my PhD thesis, I said, I'll go in there and find out why people are not motivated to sharing knowledge. So when I went in there and started investigating by having structured interviews, I found that the people that management said were not sharing knowledge were in fact sharing knowledge, and they were sharing it quite openly. Some of the problems, however, was they didn't realize the knowledge that they had was important for other people. So they didn't know the value of that particular knowledge. The issue in this particular case was that they were in fact sharing knowledge, but they were not sharing knowledge with management. They were sharing knowledge with each other. They were sharing knowledge informally. They were sharing knowledge with people outside of their own organization, to people that were doing similar jobs in similar organizations. But in a strictly knowledge-sharing perspective, they were sharing quite openly. They just weren't sharing knowledge with management. So management said they're not sharing knowledge at all. But what they really meant is they're not sharing knowledge with us. And they didn't consider that this was important to share knowledge with management because they were only interested in getting their jobs done. They had a great deal of job satisfaction internally, but they were not being supported by management when they did it. So it was an interesting scenario. This second one of motivation here really describes how the tasks contribute and how much control the worker has over it. In terms of the organization, these are the links, the elimination of imbalances and bottlenecks, the flow through the system. You can be doing your part of a particular job particularly effectively. You can actually know that you are doing a really, really good job. But the next person in that value chain that you hand your work to, well, I won't say the person, the next stage of where that information goes to, that you've actually completed, then it gets lost. It gets sent in different directions. And it gets misused or misabused or not acted upon in the right way. That's when you get imbalances and bottlenecks. So you yourself may not be so motivated if you know that even though you are doing a good job with your part of the work, that the next person is not going to do anything with it. And that's going to have a run-on effect, not a run-on, a run-back effect on you eventually and your job. You say, well, I'm doing my best here, but nobody's actually using this knowledge, so therefore, why should I keep doing my job properly? So it's all sorts of motivation, and the design itself is very important to keep individuals motivated. Taylor's scientific management approaches led to increasing levels of specialization. You know that story, I'm sure that I've mentioned this before. When Frederick Winslow Taylor stood in front of the US Congress in 1911 and said, if you are fit enough and you are phlegmatic enough to be able to handle the shoveling of pig iron, then you won't be the sort of person who's best able to know how best to handle pig iron. And that was actually bringing into play this idea of management and workers. The workers actually did the work, and management were actually telling people how to do the work. In an industrial society, that had its points. Although theoretically, I'm thinking, well, if you were shoveling pig iron, I'd want to know how to do it most efficiently, because I think that would be an awful job to do anyway. So I'm not even convinced of Taylorism's value in that sense from an industrial perspective, from an industrial era perspective. But we are squarely now in a knowledge or information age, and it is about knowledge. It's not about handling pig iron anymore. The increasing levels of specialization, which industry has adopted all the way through the 20th century until, well, in some cases is right now. We've still got those levels of specialization. Could produce low morale, high turnover of staff, and high absenteeism, and contribute to low flexibility and knowledge of other parts of the system. You know, you're a widget builder. You know, you don't know anything about what this guy does, and this is a super widget builder. You know, the things may be similar, but you have no idea what each other is doing. Specialization doesn't lead to flexibility. If you're on holidays or you're sick one day, you won't be able to do each other's jobs because it's so much specialization. Job satisfaction, it was found, could lead to higher productivity. And you refer here to Hertzberg and the Hawthorne experiments. Today, many organizations provide high-performance work environments which provide opportunities for continual learning and personal growth for employees. It's the design of the jobs, the design of how you actually do the jobs, which will keep your employees more motivated. And the methods of increasing that job satisfaction, You've got cross-training. Also, I call this co-location. I like to use the word co-location, but cross-training probably explains it better. It says that you're the accountant and you're the marketing person, and you don't understand how each other's thinks within an organization. You need to work within a process, but you can't really see what he's thinking about, and you can't really see what this guy's thinking about. It's like the engineers and the marketers within the Tarong Energy. They couldn't see each other's viewpoints. So what management can do is to swap roles. And you, the accountant, I can put into marketing, and marketing I can put you in as the accountant, and you get that training in somebody else's roles. So you then can see the problem with a different lens. You see it with a different lens. You're providing that cross-training across or co-location. You're going to have job enlargement. Enlarge the job, make it bigger. You're going to have job enrichment by going deeper into a particular job. Or you can engage in team productions. A lot of organizations, the first one that really became important in this was, and it's not a good example because they don't exist anymore, is Volvo, who were pioneers in having these small teams work on, not in an assembly line type practice, but they did it in a particularly good way. It was very advanced in those days. But the way that you set your teams up as cross-functional teams can increase job satisfaction. Tell you another one that does it, Colgate-Palmolive. Now they're toothpaste people, and what else do they do? Soap. And it's not that I don't clean my teeth at all, it's just don't know what other things Colgate-Palmolive do. But they're a really massive organization. And they have big factories around the world, which they set their teams up in that particular way. What tends to differentiate services from manufacturing is this interaction of frontline staff with customers. This introduces an element of unpredictability into service delivery and quality. Some people can't accept that. Some organizations can't accept that unpredictability. But one way to deal with this is to empower staff. That is, to allow them to make on-the-spot decisions in the interest of customer service. Now, usually this is related to service recovery when something goes wrong, when the organization's made a mistake. I'm going to give you this example because this is a great example. I'm going from Al-Ain to Brisbane. I'm working in Al-Ain. I want to go home to Brisbane, and I don't want to pay anything. So I've got frequent flyer points. Because I'd come from Asia, I'm a gold frequent flyer member with Singapore Airlines. I'd also flown with Qantas, and I've got lots and lots of frequent flyer points with Qantas. This is before I became an Etihad member and an Emirates member. But so I was a gold member with. Yes, I was a gold member with Singapore Airlines. But I didn't have enough points to go the whole way from Dubai to Singapore to Brisbane. There was no direct flights in those days. This was in 2009, 2010. It was before the direct flights from Australia to Dubai. You had to go through Singapore. So I get to Abu Dhabi Airport in the middle of the night, I don't know, around midnight, and there's no one there. There's a couple of people behind the desk, and I'm thinking, where's all the passengers for my plane? And I'm flying Singapore Airlines, using my frequent flyer points by mine. I'm flying Singapore Airlines from Abu Dhabi to Singapore, and then I'm using my frequent flyer points by swapping over to a Qantas flight from Singapore back to Brisbane. I wanted to use all my frequent flyer points for this particular trip. But when I get up there, I find that the flight or the plane itself